Start of game turn 1. The Serbians, first we went through the preliminary phase, had to hunt down, and some units are active now that weren't before. That's basically it. Austrian units, a handful of them. But during the joint preliminary phase, right? No, during the attachment, that was joint preliminary. During the attachment phase, the Serbians are shifting their commands a little bit. Essentially what's happening is the units are moving into areas that I want a different command. So like the 3rd Corps here, it's allowed to have 5.5 divisions, 1, 2, 3, 4.5 there. And it really kind of runs to here, taking where the main brunt of things are. I haven't made a decision yet on this Uzis unit, whether or not I need that up there or if I can keep it back where it was supposed to be. It started heading up northward, but I'm a little worried that I don't have much back here, especially since I had to fall back from the location where I really wanted that fort. And elsewhere over here, so like the 2nd Corps has shifted really to a slice here, fairly thin. And then the 1st Corps has almost nothing left in it. It has one unit that's working its way forward. What? I don't know why Timok 1 wouldn't be with it. Let's just give them Timok 1 as well for now. But it's really a matter of, because the supply wagons have to be back there for the Corps to handle the units that, assets and whatnot that I can't really move. And to some extent, I have to keep the Corps designation. I have to keep someone back here, and that's going to have less and less of these loose divisions as I shift the 2nd and 3rd Corps over. It's just something that's going to happen. I'm noticing I lost the Drina 2 combine unit. There should be another unit which combines with it, the Lornizka. I can no longer create this divisional unit. Another oopsie having to do with this damn limb unit here. What happened was the road got cut. Otherwise I would be in supply where I was, but I can't trace from back here. This is a Serbian unit. So he's actually going to be out of supply in the supply phase. And that's going to cause possible CER losses, etc. And I got to get him out of there completely, which probably means the Montenegrins have to fall back further than they are because I can't defend this pass. The only effect of that is I take a minus, I mean, this is a big deal. I take a -1 CEL and then the out of supply goes away. I could be out of supply again if I'm in a combat. That won't cause an immediate CEL loss. It'll just mean I don't get to use ammo and I'm at half strength and whatever. Now it's time for me to move. I forgot to do in the last finishing phase. Remember, these are both sides. Both players place or flip over pontoon bridges. I ignored the next thing, which was the river crossing markers. These guys have recovered a little bit, having made the crossing. They have less of a strength reduction. It's important because I have the opportunity to try to launch an attack against them. I knew there was some sort of restriction on building improved position early in the game. I found it. You get the right to build improved positions each interphase. There hasn't been an interphase yet. I couldn't have even begun digging in there. We'll forget about that right now. The Serbs got caught a little off guard, whatever. But I was considering trying to dig in, say here, where I'm not moving anything. I'm like, well, if I got the right to. I don't. I don't have any improved position markers that I can start to build at this point. So that's kind of a big deal. The Serbian movement, I am moving that Uzis unit up here. I feel like this is the bigger threat right now. Although just sheer numbers of these units coming over the mountains could be a problem. It's almost impossible to make any movement through the mountains except along the roads. It's not that you can't move through those mountains at not too much higher a rate. It's that you can't draw supply over them. You need the roads to get your supply, and you really can't fight without supply. So, yeah. And let's see. Trying to see if there's something really exciting. Oh, I've got a prepared attack launching against that river crossing. I feel like the Austrians made a mistake trying to cross there. It's not great odds, but with the prepared attack, it should be okay. And I don't see a way that the Austrians are going to be able to get forces up there. They could pull reinforcements from there, but that's more, weakened units. So I'm like, you know what? I'll take my shot. One of the things it does is it gets me into whatever that city is, Sava, something like that. Sabak, which is of some value because that's worth a victory point a turn. Now, I could have just parked there, but I feel like I'm going to be able to do some damage to the Austrians. That's going to put it to the counter move phase. The Austrians get their chance to react. How quickly can I get there? Well, swamp hexes, their bottom land, they're still cheap. So could I get here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not without a forced march, and a forced march is dangerous. We saw what it does, and these are probably all assets. A marsh unit, which is horrible, and one of these river asset units, which, would only be adding a couple of strength points. That might be enough, to make the big difference, but yeah, it's not a great situation. And this guy's way too far away. You don't get to move many hexes in this counter move thing. You have 5 movement points. That's basically 2 hexes in decent terrain. The useful thing is there's people who played the game before who watched to see me blunder through it. And someone caught the same thing with the not having capability to build improved positions. And remembered that. Somebody else noted something, and I can't find anything, and I think they're working off memory, which is that the army depots are flipped over if they're on the, the narrow gauge railway. I can't find that, and I found one thing on the extended mode that says supply units are flipped to extended mode when voluntarily to extend supply range, involuntarily for a retreat or displace. So, I'm not seeing it. I can't guarantee it's not in there. Maybe it's changed between versions or something. Maybe I'm just blind, but I'm going to keep going the way I'm going. There is a limitation. You can only have one army operating off of one of the narrow gauge railways. So that is the limitation in this, in the rule set that I am aware of. What I get for kind of failing to mark my position well, normally I put where I am here. I think I'm in the counter movement phase, but I had to look in the rule book and ended up dislodging that and thought that I was at the start of turn 1, and that felt a little wrong. But then I noticed, hey, I've got this here and whatnot. Actually, what I noticed was I had activated some of the units. I had done the preliminary phase. So, yeah, I think I'm in the counter movement phase. The reason that, well, this is kind of weird. When, I was starting up a video saying, hey, I'm starting turn 1 here because it's been a couple of days. And also indicating that I don't know whether or not I'm going to finish this video or, at some other point in the near future, be in a position where I have to stop partway through or something. Things are not going well with my mother, and I may end up having to go down there for whatever that matters. Supply is only checked in the beginning of your own turn. I got kind of a neat little sleaze where I was able to get, I don't remember which unit. Oh, I think this supply wagon back, basically it wasn't in supply at the beginning of the Serbian turn. I had moved out of supply, but the extra movement allowed me to move close. I don't have anything of that case over here, though, and I'm kind of in a troublesome position where I'm going to have to go to extended supply to get this guy through and to join the rest of the 5th Army formations there. There's a nice big gap right here, which is where that Uzi's unit is. And I don't know, I mean, it can't really do much harm trying to exploit the gap. So basically, I may have a lot of strength up here, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I'm too weak down in the south. I'm not sure. Looking for the last few things, I moved the boat in here, and I moved some artillery next to it, which can actually support it if I recall correctly. So I've got a lot of artillery capacity there. I didn't want to do the forced march or anything. And I really don't think anything else is much moving. I got a couple cleanup pieces to shift around, but that's it. Result of that, which was our only combat, going either way really, is we did force them back and caused a CER loss. Now, this is the first time we've seen a formation with attachments to it. The attachments don't take CER losses in and of themselves. They're functioning and helping the main formation. So it's the formation which took the automatic CE loss and made the check to see if it's worse affected. It wasn't. Came close. I did spend artillery on that. And the Serbians actually held out pretty well. I did not advance. I have the option to, but this is the location I want to be in. Not because it's terribly defensive. Cities don't give any real defensive thing. But because it's worth victory points, and I would rather deny that as long as possible. And that is going to push us up to, we're not doing any counterattacks, the finishing phase where the rivers increase, and then the Serbians are going to get to reposition these to potentially better locations. Two of those markers to cover the extent I'm just in range to be able to do this. I would have taken this otherwise, but that gives me a couple in the front. The question is, what about the third one? I'll just leave that there. I don't think I need it here, but and that puts us onto the Austrian turn and me to take one of my mini breaks. An example where I feel like the game's command and control organizational elements are really kind of getting in the way. Not just being a clerical issue, a bit of fiddliness. 16th Corps, I had one unit, I think the 13th Brigade there, that was attached to the 15th Corps. It's no big deal. I noticed it and I swapped them. It has almost no effect. The only place it would have a real effect is if I don't notice and I fuck up. And is that something that's really worth making a part of the game, as it were? So there are some edge case scenarios where, I don't know, your reaction moves are somewhat limited, but I honestly think that this whole Corps division and Army division stuff is too much effort. There are units that, you know, are permanently attached, and that's fine. The units that aren't, you're flexible enough to play with. At this point in the game, at least, maybe we'll see something different. Maybe it'll change my mind. I understand what it's representing, and it's not something that's represented in most games, but I see why it's not. Because you do have the flexibility to shift something. This thing that was in the 15th Corps, well, now it's part of the 16th Corps. But if I hadn't noticed, I would screw up and I would not be able to attack with that unit or whatever. And that's just, you know, where you've got corps that are close to each other. Let's take a look at like the 8th and 13th under the 5th Army here. What would happen there? Well, the plan, it's now requiring me to do pre-planning at this stage in my turn instead of during the movement. The movement's hard enough, right? The movement is hard enough to do that kind of planning. And I just feel like it's this additional burden that is not adding much at all to the game. Is it adding much story? I don't know. I mean, there's something in me that likes it, but I want there to be, I don't know. I want there to be more payoff to it. Like when you attach things in CWB, which I almost never do anyway, but because they're following a certain set of orders. There aren't core orders. There are army orders, which I'm probably not paying enough attention to and ought to be putting some of these counters down to make sure that I'm getting closer to the goals of the different armies. I know I am with the 5th, and I assume I am with the 6th, but assume can be dangerous. It's actually, even that is a really easy thing to cope with. It keeps you in a geographical area, but you can kind of bounce between locations, and I'll show you the reason for that in a moment. I'll put the counters down so you can see. So here I put the operational goals. These are the minor ones. This is the primary one for the 5th Army. For the 6th Army, the blue ones again are the minor. This is the primary. And essentially what happens is, as long as I'm moving closer to one of these goals, I'm following my plan. And I thought there was one further back. Maybe there is in that first scenario, because I remember feeling very, very flexible there. No, plan for this 5th Army is in effect, and there are only 2. I'm just making sure because I thought I remembered there was another one up here. 26, 11, 25. Yeah. But the fact that I'm heading in this general direction and there's a triangular placement makes it almost impossible to not follow the goals unless I go way off board from them, which is okay. It means that there's not a lot of effort that has to be put in, but on the other hand, vaguely I could end up breaking them very easily without intending to, if I don't have the markers on the board the way I do. Okay. I'm still working on trying to attach the units. A similar way, keeping the CERs under here means the information's not on the map for me to see very easily. Which again, having to have an additional counter to track this one value. If you got rid of the organizational, you would still have the need to track that value. That value could be tracked right on the board instead. It's again this layer, that the way the design is set up. There's nothing inherently, wow, that's just wrong. It's that it's inherently clunky, and the whole system is clunky. And again, I'm just not seeing too much gain for that. And it's, in some cases, the argument is always, well, how good. Some people are arguing, hey, you get the same outcome without all this complexity. I don't really care about the outcome. Obviously, that's the case if you look at how much I like Le Grand Guerre, for example, where I feel like the outcome comes out ahistorical every time I play it. And in fact, sometimes hard to believe, like the casualty levels that I feel the game promotes you reaching cannot be recovered, and the armies end up in worse shape than they did historically every 3 months. In this, I don't know, the outcome could be just fine, but the key to Le Grand Guerre is what it's giving me is this really interesting story addition. Here, what's the interesting story addition? Did I shift a unit over to a different command? Is that really worth it? I do find the distinction between the CER and step losses an interesting one, a useful one, because the step losses indicate actual damage to the unit in terms that it doesn't have the strength points to operate, and damage that maybe isn't accompanied by, so there's reinforcements and replacements that come in through here, but there's probably also a steady stream of replacements forces that are coming in to replace the casualties that are represented in a CER loss. But the CER loss is representing unit cohesion as opposed to that other aspect, which is just the unit is under strength. So while an understrength unit could be getting replacements in it, those replacements aren't fully integrated, and the CER is a nice way to represent that. If you take enough CER losses, you get to what amounts to a strength loss in addition to all the penalties for the CER. And I think that's an interesting distinction, one which does tell you more story. Whereas the more story about who's this attached to at this given moment, it's the same state that I had with Der Weltkrieg, where you're keeping track of individual units, and what it ends up meaning is that you're shifting units along the line to make sure that your line is all pretty much the same strength, except obviously at weak points, corners and whatnot, where you want greater strength. But you've got large stretches of straight line where you don't want to present any weaknesses in the line, so you're just moving units around to get that equivalent strength, and it just feels like this tedious task that isn't really doing much. Now, if the level of the game was such where that unit designation was really, really important part of the story, that makes more sense, maybe. But there's so many units that honestly, you start losing track. It's not like you're paying attention to given units or anything, and you're not tracking them and keeping histories on them or anything like that. You could, but if you're going to go through that much additional work beyond what the game requires, you could actually, I don't know. I guess that's the one argument for it, to tell you the truth, because you would basically have to make your own counters otherwise to keep track of what the unit designations are. Here again, I don't feel like I care that much about, is the 13th Brigade attached to the 15th Corps or 16th Corps at any given time? I really don't. I care about, is it able to operate, and help the unit it's closest to. And that's almost always the case. And you have to do some bookkeeping to make sure you don't screw that up. Looking at little pieces of the game in some detail, the river crossing. That is, again, a tedious factor. You cross the river, you get a penalty marker. At the end of that turn, it gets reduced. I forgot to reduce them again at the end of the Serbian turn. All these units are now fully crossed, and I took care of that and cleaned it up now. How important is that? Well, the way the sequence of play is interleaved, the way both players can attack on either player's turn, yeah, it is actually an important distinction. Could it just not deal with that first turn reduction? Sure, but you have some time to prepare yourself. If you're not thrown back immediately as you're crossing the river by the cordon, assuming there is one, then you're a little bit better off having crossed the river during your turn and then the opponent's turn if they want to try to throw you back at that point. So I see that distinction there. You could make arguments that, again, it's too much effort for what the payoff is. But that one could go either way, in my opinion. Unlike the core dispositions, I don't feel like that's worth it. Setting up and launching an attack here, I'm beginning to see why this is useful even in a tactical sense. It's preventing me from getting a grip on this. That's easy. Basically, I got 2 units I'd like to do an attack on this with prepared attack. I feel like I'm not able to come to grips with any of the units, and that's probably one of the best places that I can launch an attack. I don't know if I was here. I think I was here. Well, These are mountain hexes. That means I can only use 1 1/4 divisions from them. These are each a division, and, oh, or into, for that matter, isn't it? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I mean, I just don't think I can take that, period, if that's the case. When defending in or attacking into or out of mountainous terrain, the number of division equivalents that can participate in combat is 1 1/4. Okay. Yeah, attacking in any kind of mountains looks almost impossible. And this counts as mountainous terrain. Cheating and peaking. There is 7 strength points here. These are I don't have 1 1/4. I have 1 or 1 1/2. I don't have a regiment there to throw in. And that means that at best, I'm looking at about 2 to 1, which ain't good. Not good. I can't even drop a prepared assault on that. It's too many movement points. It's 4 to move in there, plus 2 for the zone of control, brings it to 6, 10 to launch the attack. I can manage a prepared attack here. I'm going to go for that, I guess, and try to brush. Now, I could have done a repulse to try to get this hex. That might actually be not a bad move. Except I don't have the odds. You need at least 3 to 1, I think, for a repulse, and I'm not able to do that with a single force there. So yeah, this is pretty much a breakwater right now. But if I, not so much this is just opening the way for more units, really. But if I break in here, I'm kind of degrading this position, and the Serbs may have to fall back. I think that's about it for Austrian movement, so we'll go to the counter move phase. Whew. Everything is painful. It really is. I have a whole lot they can do to defend themselves. They're hoping this just holds. This one, well, I couldn't get anything in there without a forced march type situation, and I don't really want to risk that. So we'll see whether they can hold out there. It may have been a mistake to shove myself up that far. It definitely reduced the opportunity for an attack this way, though, so, you know, one way or another, but it is an exposed position. We got the CER checks, which I'm just going to call morale checks from now on, basically, I think. Over here, the Austrians lost some morale off their main unit. Actually, off all 3 units, which is going to be kind of painful. Now they're more likely to break under pressure. Over here, basically nothing happened, even with the artillery engagement. So you can see, even with prepared attacks, here I had a 3 to 2 attack prepared. Didn't get a bad die roll, but it ended up being effectiveness checks for both sides at like +2. The artillery throws in, it gives a bonus to the Austrians because they have more guns. Anything left? Counterattack. I highly doubt that the Serbs want to counterattack anywhere. And then we go through the finishing phase, and I don't think there's a whole lot there. But this is a Austrian player turn, so they'll get some victory points for, they'll get 1 point for advancing over here, I believe. End of the turn. On game turn 2, you can see there's a withdrawal of the 9th Corps. That's this. I don't think any additional units. I think it's just the train that goes away and the command structure, but and I don't really need it. The 2nd Army shifted that over here to command these in case I needed to, but yeah. I've already dispatched the units that were attached there. There was nothing guaranteed over into the 5th Army. But the entirety of the 2nd Army is supposed to withdraw eventually. So we should be seeing that 4th Corps leave at some point up here as well. It's just that, like, there's less units attached to the division, so that you have the flexibility, well, so that you have the capability to follow the historical situation where the whole Second Army wasn't withdrawn. A little bit of it was left behind, and that's kind of what we're going to see here. Guess that's about it. All right, break time again, I guess. Got my victory points confused again and paid the Interphase victory points, not the ones that come at the end of every turn. The only one that comes at every turn is this. So I kind of think I'm supposed to hold that because that's worth 1 point per turn. There's, 3 turns in between each interphase. So in order to make that equivalent, the Austrians would have to be on this column, basically. Now, if they're able to get to that column and start closing to the river, this is a problem. But as it stands right now, I feel like I can hold this line, and the Austrians are not pushing deep into, in the southern areas either. So it's going to be a slog. It's not easy to push things around in this game. Starting turn 2 here, I noticed something that I've cheated on. The 6th Army Depot I had been moving, and it couldn't until now. Now, here's the thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That core command is fine. And this one is not, but it's sitting on a rail line, a functioning rail line going all the way back. So it's in supply as well. Had I not had that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to about here, I was in range. So there might have been a little bit of cheating going on. I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah. I said Austrian, didn't I? I hope so. But, this hunting down what activates where, I've been worried about missing these. So, for example, now I've got to find the 31 minus, which is here, and that's going to activate. That's fine. And I think the other one is the 32. But, it's a pain in the ass way of handling things when these should probably be in the joint reinforcement information. And the 32-4, I think that's this one. My eyes seem to tell me it is. But yeah, you basically have to run through the entire setup list to look for when things activate and when they don't. Now, eventually, that's not going to be an issue. I think it's sometime after turn 4 that we stop worrying about that, and the withdrawals are covered in here, but it is a pain in the ass. Now, obviously, the worry I had was more about not realizing something had activated and leaving it turned over, whereas here I just somehow had never marked it as inactive, or maybe had it rotated. I had it rotated. I did. I remember seeing it and saying, well, that can't be right, and not looking it up or whatever. So yeah. And train 15, 1022. Whoa. Well, this wasn't able to move either. Wow, this is fucking annoying. Maybe this is the one I saw. All right, we may have to pull back if that's the case. Train 22 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we got them all in supply, and that's fine. I just wanted to move the supplies up so that I'd have more flexibility later. This actually ensures that I didn't cheat on that other stuff, because that's here. I think I caught the ones. Who knows? If I find upside down units, I'm likely to be more worried about them and go check them. But I thought I had everything upside down right. Unfortunately, when I flip counters, it's one of two ways. It's either like this, or like this. And if I didn't need that extended, I could have flipped it and upside downed it all at the same time. And I suspect that's something that happened. I don't think this is enough to worry about. Certainly, whatever. Issues I find as well is that I combine phases. So I'm like, you know, I don't want to do this attachment thinking in conjunction or prior to the movement and then have to try to remember what I'm doing. So one of my shortcuts is that, and check supply and stuff like that, and just extend it as needed. I think I'm in supply everywhere. If I find I'm not, I can fall back and fix that pretty quickly. It is not a joint supply. It's only on your own player turn you have to worry about it. So it kind of work sector by sector, and maybe have to rewind things or change things around, but it's just the only way I can make this thing play. Turned out I'm sending the Uzis unit back down. Wasted time. My hope is to cover more along here in this area down here where I think there's some potential for weakness. Not a real outflank. You're not going to be able to cut through this shit, but I consolidated my Montenegrin units down here again. I'm kind of unable to make up my mind where I want to defend, basically. The reasoning being that it's going to be hard to get a swerve around or anything along those lines. And up here, these Moravians were able to make it in time to cut the pass. And again, unless you count everything and pre-count everything, you're not going to know this kind of stuff easily, like what you're going to be able to beat. And part of it has to do with the supply line here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have a hard time. I couldn't get into this hex and then throw is the problem. Now, if I get this on the 13th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, remember I can cross into one mountain area without a road, and that would actually be in supply. So this can kind of slip around that edge still. But it wasn't able to do it last turn because of lack of movement or something along those lines. I don't really remember. Maybe I forgot to move them. But yeah, and thickening things up, trying to get reinforcements into this space. I don't want to lose this hill. This is really important, but I couldn't just move in there without a forced march, and I didn't want to do that. Does that mean he could do a prepared, well, he can't do a prepared counterattack, and he doesn't really have the numbers to just do an attack. So I feel like I've kind of stymied the Austrians in the north. The first time I played, they got an extra turn. Like on turn 1, they were able to advance a little further. I did some repulses and stuff. I may have cheated differently. Who knows? Anyway, that's going to put us on the counter movement phase. And again, I need to get away. It's just too much each time I try to figure out the distances and everything. I don't expect much to happen. So for example, here I was doing a prepared attack. Well, now there's more artillery and shit in there, and it's a harder fight, you know, and I'm not really able to bring much more in with 5 movement points. And that's kind of the problem that I'm running into, is how do I get by the Serbians now? They've kind of blocked my path. And looking at the counter moves and what I could do, I got all kinds of units I can bring against this. This is low mountain terrain again, isn't it? I'm not sure. It's fucking hard to tell what's what. I gotta check the colors. So this is rough. That means foothills is this color. I think this is low mountain. This is high mountain. So, silly, I threw myself into a valley, which is not wise. I might have been better off holding somewhere else, but then you know, this hex could have been taken. I don't know why I wanted to defend that. But anyway, I'm looking at the move forward here, and I am not impressed. Like, let's say I moved in with everything, really. I mean, I could get these guys here, all of these here. Stacking limitations are fine on the per hex level, but when I fight the battle, I can only attack with a division and a quarter. And a division and a quarter means 10 strength points, maximum. Out of these guys. Maybe I could do a little better if I sent something bigger down. I am facing 7. 10 to 7 means I'll be on the 3 to 2 table. If I don't do a prepared attack, that works out okay, I guess, except that I am facing what? I'm facing a penalty, no, because it's a down elevation. See, I thought this was a hilltop, which is what made it much worse. So it's a down elevation, and the contour lines are against me there. It is still a low mountain, though, which adds 3 to the defensive strength, so it goes up to 10 to 10. So I'm on the 1-to-1 table, at best. With a prepared attack, I can get that up to 3 to 2, which is pretty much where I saw myself get hurt. I just don't think I have the forces to assault this unless I can create a flanking attack. But can I? I'm not allowed to attack with more than 1 1/4 units, so I might have to combine from different forces or whatever in order to make sure I get the flanking zones of control. That gives me another 2 shifts. Along with the prepared attack, 3 shifts up. That's enough to probably take, or at least to get good trades. What I got over here was not a good trade, wherever I got hurt. I don't know who got hurt. The 42nd got hurt. What, is that this? Yeah. So that guy got hurt a little bit. But basically, the situation's just declined for an attack. There's artillery in there now, etc. It's pretty much out of the question. And it's really hard to brush the enemy away. And I probably can't really afford to do any kind of flanking attack or anything, especially this is, again, mountain. Wow, that's, I think, fairly steep. I think that's this stuff. Well, no, this is rough. This is foothill. This is low mountain. So is this foothill? Oh, no, I think this is low mountain still. Being able to distinguish the terrain is always difficult in these kind of games for me. The coloring shades and all. Yeah, so I don't see much opportunity, certainly not on a counter move, but I also just don't see a whole lot of opportunity for pushing the enemy around. And what about repulsing? Well, again, you need like 3 to 1 from one force. So you need a force that's capable of pretty much bludgeoning the enemy anyway to brush him out of the way. That was something I saw in the other time I played, is that I did a little bit of repulsing. I may have cheated a little bit. I may know more now. But yeah, I was able to push a little bit further and get kind of close. I don't know. Like, I think I was around here, and I had broken this line. The Serbs had run away as well, though. Finishing up what I'm doing in the south, I look way up here to the other flank, because I'm going to do the center in the middle, or at the end, once I kind of know what I can do elsewhere. And here I got a couple of big units that could be increased in size, but that would involve absorbing these detachments. And if I do that, that runs me into a bit of a problem. There's a possibility for the Serbs to launch an attack into Serbian. And if they do that, and get any successes, they can get significant victory points off of that. So I'm a little hesitant of doing that, although I could definitely use some more covering forces if I'm going to concentrate fire against the unit. So like here, I am going to bring another division into play and everything and try to whack that hard. Of course, aren't attacking, but for the Austrians, I think I'm going to launch another attack here, simply because time is of the essence. If I don't get this out of there, if I don't get this hex cleared soon, or at least badly beaten, they've got the capability to put even more units in there now. I'm trying to remember what the stacking... Do we have stacking? Yeah, we do. Attacking or defending is 2 1/4 divisions. Right now, I've got 1 1/4. I could throw another division in there, and this unit actually could have probably made it there, but I don't think I could have gotten into here easily. Anyway, right now I see a defect in the line, well, a potential strengthening of the line there that I want to make sure does not happen. I need that victory point every turn, and I need to see if I can push the river line further down, because that frees up units. Now, I freed up 1 of my units already, sending it over here. And it's a friendly movement phase. I could actually combine those guys. I don't need to yet, though, so let me think about that. I did leave this open. You want to try crossing? Go ahead. You know, I think there's still enough over there that might not be a wise idea for the Serbs. Well, again, goes with no effect. I did not try to make it intense on either side. The Serbs actually ended up kind of lucky. They got a +3 on their CER check, and then the artillery added another couple points to it, so they're looking at +5 to the table. But their quality is so high. I rolled a 6, which isn't, you know, terrible. And, you know, I was expecting to see a CER loss, but they have a quality of 11. And, yeah, so didn't budge them, didn't get anything, and that means we will be hitting the finishing phase. Cav doesn't have anywhere to run. River Step, I don't think there's anything going on under that. Serbs could move their markers. I kind of like where these two are. I'm beginning to think, though, that I want to defend something more. Now down here I got problems, because I kind of let myself get exposed. I'm worried about getting outflanked. Now I can drop down into here and start moving these, but they're very slow. They're like one per turn. Getting out of here would be almost all my movement points. It'd give up that objective hex, but would get me closer to there. So I'm going to take this one off. It doesn't look like the Austrians are coming that way, and throw it down here where it gives me a strength point. You know, that other one wasn't doing shit. It's slowing down a possible attack in that direction. Well, there isn't going to be one. And victory points, this was a Serbian turn, so nothing would change anyway. That gets us to the Austrian side. And I believe, yeah, there are reinforcements coming in and all kind of fun stuff. Of course, I need another break. The combination units, and I kind of screwed something up there. Couldn't remove the unit from the game completely. It can actually still come back. It'll come back with weakened strength, and then you can use like replacements and whatever to bring it up to strength. So it's not a lost cause for those, and I'll try to sort them out, I guess, at some point. I don't feel up to it right now. I'm trying to concentrate again for an attack here, but they're going to get their counter move, and might be able to do something obnoxious and increase my my problems. Do this attack correctly, I will get flanking benefits. There's prepared attack set up so the Serbs aren't going to be able to get away easily. And they're going to pay a heavy price, well, Montenegrins, they're going to pay a heavy price for leaving that unit out there. I think. We'll see. Because again, the odds aren't that good. And that's the issue. But I'm cut off from supply, and the odds are better than they looked. Over here, I don't have the strength to push this unit out of the way. So yeah, I'm going to try battering again and see what happens. But before I do that, we do get the chance for the Serbs to move in there. That was what I was looking at before. And then over here, I'm not launching an attack. I actually withdrew part of the 13th Corps here with the intention of trying to get more force on this. I just don't have enough that I can pivot on it. It's not a mountain hex, so I can do this just with force, but it does open things up here and threatens my supply if I do what I'm planning on doing. So I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm clearly not getting any traction with the positioning that I had. These armory markers should probably be moved up. It's kind of hard to do because really the 2nd is there along that line, and the 5th, well, the 5th is up against it, so it doesn't really matter where I put it. Pretty soon the 5th is going to be gone, so we'll just put that up there. Those are supposed to be up at the front. Serbs were unable to reinforce this hex. However, got a kind of crappy result for the Austrians. I don't remember what it was. It was like +1, +2 over here. Because proficiency levels, the Serbs are better. So there's a -1, and I got that crappy 1 on the white die there. Over here we succeeded and caused 2 CERs to the Montenegrin formation, which pretty much has to back its way out, and that's going to mean this thing probably can be undermined too, in which case then the 6th Army is free to operate once it captures this. It succeeded in its plans. That doesn't give me any victory points directly, although I had to look because stuff down here is worth something, and I probably ought to track that. Up here though, you know, we had pretty good odds. We got it up to like 3-1, including the shift for prepared, or 4-1 for prepared, but got this really shitty die roll. Okay, well, the artillery numbers gives us another +2, so what we were really looking at was a 0 to +4. And that should at least affect these. Again, I'm not pressing the attack, which maybe I should have, but it would have just cost the attacker more because you get a shitty die roll and you don't cause the retreat. And you do cause more losses if you don't get the retreat you would have gotten anyway. So what ended up happening was, let me think, yeah, and that would be step losses if I recall correctly. What ended up happening is, for the Austrians, for the first stack I rolled for, I rolled a natural 12. And they're at 0 there. The artillery canceled out. The Serbs are spending for artillery that's giving them a -1 in this. But if they don't spend for the artillery, it gives them a -2. So anyway, they managed to cause a CER reduction on the unit there, or units there. Actually, there's two formations attacking there. I screwed up and forgot to move the unit from the 2nd Army over to the 5th, but then I made that up because clearly that's what I meant to do. I just had to check, you know, the 5th Army, 4th Corps is pretty much at limit. I can't throw more stuff into it, which is one of the factors in here. One of the things that does make sense is that your corps are limited. One thing to keep in mind, and I'm tracing from here now, but if you do have those extended formations, like I said, they have the number counters you got to use for the ammo if you're using that. But I'm not finding a concentrated attacks of such numbers that they bring the ammo supply into question. I mean, this thing can supply, I think it's, I'm going to say 8 formations. But I may be mistaken there. Maybe 8 hexes of combat. So you're really unlikely to drain that unless the 6th Army is doing, it has another corps in it or whatever. With 2 corps per army, it just doesn't seem too likely. And likewise, the actual corps units, yeah, they're half the size. But again, I got 4 units here. I had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 units here, which if it's on a per unit basis would be kind of expensive, but I'm pretty sure it's not. And I could only attack with 2 units, you know, because of the mountains. I needed all those units because I couldn't attack with all the units. But yeah, then over here, the Serbs with their incredible quality just kind of shrugged it off. And increasing the intensity would not have done more harm to the Serbs. It would have caused step loss to the Austrians. So I don't feel like I really wanted to fight harder there. Would the Serbs have wanted to fight harder? Yeah, maybe, but step losses are expensive and you can take extra casualties and get the same results, if I recall correctly. So it's like, yeah, it's just not worth it. So again, the Serbs aren't going to counterattack, which means we go down to this little thing, and I don't think there's much going on here. I got to check the victory points. Well, freeing up the 6th Army would be a problem in terms of, I don't know what, not having to chase this. This is actually the hex that I want to get to for victory points, and it's worth like 5 victory points. So, I mean, it's worth something, and it's just if you ever pass through it, you get the victory points for it, and I guess I would have to notate that somehow, that I had gone through that, so I remember it. I'm a little surprised that this is not the victory point space. The only other one down here is this one. The others, I think, are Belgrade, which is up there, and this thingy, which is the goal of the 5th Army. So, yeah. I guess that pushes us to game turn 3. I would have liked to have gotten to the interface tonight, but it's too hard for me to do things, and the emotional shit, too. And now I'm like, back in mode of cannot go, cannot do anything, must delay, because there's reasons to delay, and all decisions must be delayed as long as possible. The only withdrawal reinforcement that the Serbs have on turn 4 or turn 3 is they lose one of these guys, and I'll just put it in the tray. I don't think it comes back. That's actually a big deal. I took from here because still more focused up there. This one was kind of iffy anyway, but I am worried about the collapse in the south, you know, giving way and allowing that 6th Army to come up and do damage to me. I think a couple of mistakes I made there made that very possible. Check the name again. I can't remember the names of some of these towns, but Sabak up here, which is incredibly important to the game. Serbs managed to get their reinforcement and extra division in there. I also reorganized my armies because they were starting to get, or my corps, because they were starting to get out of alignment. Basically, I've shifted everything over here, so now the 2nd is taking the northern area near the river, the 3rd is taking this area down here, and the 1st is in command of the stuff that's in the distance. I kind of would like to get this Obervac under control, actually, though. So do I need this here I don't think I do. I think I can move that closer. This shit is rough. It's 3H. 3, 6, 9. We'll lose our way this way. I've moved everything else. My goal is to get that under supply line. Although it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 within supply of the rail. Well, it's on a rail line, so it's within supply of a rail line. So I could put it under any command I liked. But basically, the second core is getting so full that I'm losing some flexibility and would rather not. And I can just shift this a little over, I guess. I don't know. Montenegrins pulled back. Otherwise, not a whole lot of interest on pulling things back here to help defend the south because, yeah, I blundered. And that'll get me to the counter move. A lot you can do in counter move. As the attacker, though, one thing that you've got is you can kind of shift your axis a little bit because it increases your movement. You're going to get the next move right away and then your offensive activities. So, like, I push down here to get around that. Trying to flank around this. Having trouble figuring out, nothing can basically move here. The counter move phases. I'm going to have to move into these kind of spaces. The problem is I can't really get this surrounded. All my units are too big. I've got, if I attack with these two GB brigades, maybe I can get the flanking bonus. But if I use either of my big divisions, it's out of the question, you know. So it's like, wow, that's kind of painful. But you need the roadways to proceed on, so, you know, you got to clear them. At least down here. Now over here, again, I'm shifting down to try to take this on because this was impossible. But that puts me in an interesting position. The extra unit in here means this is going to be more difficult. I could launch another attack. But remember, I did a prepared assault at decent odds last time and basically got nowhere. I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall there. Maybe I can get something here. Of course, I can't move any of these units effectively in that case because it's going to cost me 6 extra movement points to move from zone of control to zone of control. So I kind of can't get any advantage out of any of that. These guys are sitting back here waiting for reinforcements. If I could clear some of this space, I could say, oh, I'm safe enough, you know, I can bring that big division in, replace it with something lighter that's holding the line like these guys are. But right now, none of that is going on. Got to make a decision on whether I want to make this attack again. Pretty obviously, the Serbians do not want to make an attack. There's not a lot of room for counterattacks right here. It could show up here and there. You know, you leave a loose unit lying around that's someplace it shouldn't be. So the real question comes down to how much strength can I get, say, against this hex next turn. And that would be 17, 22, 34. I could get probably a 3-to-1. You can't just shift the line without a forced march, and forced marches are expensive. So I don't really see too much that's gonna improve the position there. I'm debating whether or not to make the attack. Basically, I cheat. I do a quick count. You know, is that wise? Is that fair? Is that not? You know, I have little enough understanding of what the counters kind of add up to value-wise. So I feel like when you combine it with my other lacks of understanding in the game in terms of how the combat system is gonna, how the combat table is actually gonna reflect stuff and things, I think it's perfectly fair for me to look. And I can get like a 2-to-1. 2-to-1 doesn't sound very good. But if my intention is to get attritional results out of this situation, then maybe that's what I need to do. Another possibility is I could try to use another unit to pin these guys with a prepared attack, but that would be at really shitty odds and I'd probably get hurt. Sure, there's soak-offs, but I think I'll hold on the attack. Again, the Serbs aren't going to launch an attack. It makes life easier because now I'm done with the step. And we would get to switch our Komaji markers. I'm happy with where they are. They're holding the line right now. I don't think there's anything else of great importance. Where is the Cav? He's here. Yeah, so the Cav has an opportunity to withdraw, but obviously it's there to try to hold the line. And the Austrians did not get any victory points, so we flip this over. And that's probably it for quite some time. I have the problem with my, hey, pause in the middle of turn situation. So, luckily I know what I'm doing well enough that I know it's the beginning of the Austro-Hungarian player turn, but I had this thing placed here, and it looked like, you know, oh, I'm in the middle of something. And sometimes I forget to move the dice from there, all kind of stuff like that. So it's not a big deal if I'm playing, you know, every day or whatever, at least a little bit. It is a big deal when I take a couple days off and I end up in a situation that's hard to identify. Okay, and some things have changed. The Second Army is withdrawn. The Fourth Corps isn't withdrawn yet. It will be. Which is why it doesn't really help to move these units out of where they are. And I fucking cheated, damn it. This was part of those attacks, and it could not be. It's part of Fourth Corps. Shit. Oh, boy. The one thing that I shouldn't be able to cheat with, because I'm arranging all these things, and it's not just paying attention on the map where I would have just seen those yellows and said, no, that's no good. Yeah, instead I've got units that are involved in attacks that shouldn't have been. Wow. Okay, well, let's stop doing that. But we've replaced the Second Army with this AGSB thing. And it just flips over. You know, this is just really historical interest more than anything else. And we replaced the depot, or the depot for that army. And it's treated like an army, I guess, but it only has room for one extra corps, or for one corps under it, so. An additional depot for the 6th Army. I don't know how much that's going to help, but if we do get up here, these roadways could be of use. It's going to be pretty hard to align because there's no connection here, so it's going to be pretty hard to move the axis up that way instead of down this way. Of course, you can't go too deep into Serbia anyway. I mean, you've only got so many hexes you can do off the extended. So I would guess that like down here is just out of range no matter what, because there's no rail link that gets you into the enemy territory. You don't have time to rebuild it. Oh boy. We're on turn 3. No, we've already done activations in the Serbian turn. So that puts us down to attachment, supply, and movement, which really I try to do all together. And that may be the reason there was a problem here. It may not. It's just such a pain to keep track of this stuff. You know, this rather major thing, the Second Army changing into a conf group or whatever, no, an army group, isn't noted here. So you can't count on all, you know, there's the two major core withdrawals that happen, but that's the only thing that's noted there. You got the river water level changes and a couple of other specific, you know, reminders, but don't count on everything that might seem kind of important to pay attention to. This actually isn't important from game, you know, from a gameplay perspective. So I guess it's fair. If you screw it up, terrible, you know, you might end up with more core available under that command than you could legitimately have, but there's no real reason to have that more core there. My sweeping around this way isn't going to do me any good, because I won't be in supply if I'm here. It's not next to a road. And likewise, I couldn't do something, I obviously couldn't do something similar here. I'd have to plow right through and I still wouldn't have it. So it looks to me like I'm not going to be able to get those shifts, and I'm probably not going to be able to dislodge things from there. So I got to count on the attacks working here. Places I'm having difficulty seeing the differentiation in terrain types is between the upland, which is this gray, and the rough, which is this color. Now, when they're next to each other, it's fine, but when I'm looking somewhere like this, I'm not sure which it is. That's not that big a deal. There's a movement point difference, maybe a defensive difference too. Yeah, rough gives a defensive bonus. But the big thing is there is not a stacking limitation, which can really screw things up. You know, like an extra strength point because of rough terrain. Well, you know, small units, that could be a big deal, but bigger units, they don't care, which seems a little weird to me. Like, I don't really like the increase in size, increase in strength as an answer for the defensive value. Now, that's covered across the game, basically. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense that, like, it seems to me that the rough terrain would still cause issues for a larger formation trying to deal with it that aren't really well represented. Yes, I can see the case where two small units skirmishing in rough terrain is greatly to the advantage of someone. Honestly, though, I feel like some of that advantage goes to the attacker being able to kind of advance without being in clear lines of fire and whatnot. Whereas if you're looking at larger formations, man, the big deal there is that the rough terrain prevents the attacker from hitting in a coordinated fashion, which means you might be able to pick them off piecemeal as they come. So actually, I feel like this is getting the opposite effect to what I'd want, which is the larger formations are less affected than the smaller ones. So I don't know. Oh, where the hell am I? Did a lot here. I'm trying to outflank up this way. I don't know how much good that's going to do. If I can't get the entirety of the 15th Corps working up this way, it's not going to work terribly well. Right now, I'm shifting some units and using the army supply to get me this far, but I got to get that whole corps up there. And to do that, the 16th Corps has to get in a position where it's the one clearing this space. We're a long way from that right now. I'm going to make an attempt to bust through, but Yeah. And we got to garrison this because the Montenegrins can sneak up and, I don't know, presumably do something in the back of my area. It seems pretty hard to do unless you're cutting a rail line to a depot. There's not really much a small force can do to disrupt if you let them in, which probably works really well in the race to the seas type scenario in or situation in offensive outrance. Oh God, trying to deal with this, man. I want to try to get an attack on this, and I guess I'm kind of committed to trying to hit this. Ugly things happened. The ability to ooze when you're using your full movement point in reasonable terrain is there. So we've got a flanking attack, and we also put this thing in a zone of control, which means if it was a core train, it has to retreat, and it's flipped to its extended side, and it has to retreat 3 hexes. I'll back that up. I mean, that thing wasn't providing any defensive benefit, but now, yeah, got him completely surrounded. He's out of supply, no artillery ammo. This is going to be a problem if I can actually, like, really kind of wreck that. That's going to hurt the Serbian defenses quite a bit. It's hard to defend in this game, too. It's just hard to get a real image of what's going on, etc. Which, to some extent, is nice in the sense that, you know, military operations often succeed in ways that, like, on paper you should look at it and say, yeah, there's no way that should work, or they fail when they obviously should work, and the kind of blunders that you make in the game kind of apply to that. Let me make sure I'm in supply. Yeah, because I got a lot of different stacks there. I would be eating up supply, except I got everything in standard supply, so that's going to work fine. I was trying to say with the incomprehensible part of that is that the players, if the system is complex enough that the players are going to make mistakes just coping with the system, it actually opens things up in a way to making the kind of mistakes that historically happen more reasonable. When you're playing something that's significantly simpler, it's much, much more difficult to miss something important, to screw something up mechanically. Now, I get really frustrated when I make those kind of mistakes, like leaving this so that it could be absorbed. I'm used to the every other hex working pretty well. It doesn't in this design. Is that something that should be called out? I don't know. But it's sure the hell something that I'm learning. But the thing is, I don't have the strength to defend everything with this kind of line. So what the heck am I going to do? Hope for the best and hope that I do damage to the Austrians and maybe can counterattack and push one of those weak units out of the way and build up a better line defending yourself. I think you got to have more of a go-like situation where you have a little bit of a line and then you can give a little gap and a little bit of a line and stuff like that. The straight every other just, but it works in some places on the board, right? It works fine in mountainous terrain because they'd have to force march to get into there, and there's too much danger on a force march that they'll take a hit. At least that's the way I see it. It's really not that big. It's unlikely to be, yeah, it's going to be a CER loss. So, you know, maybe force marching is worth it. Maybe pressing the attack is worth it. I don't know. Live and learn. Tested a little force march to get an extra unit in here. I'm leaving 4th Corps over here to defend, I guess. I leave it in command of that thing. I don't know. And now let's see what other units I have left to move around. I got a couple of newer things that just showed up. Us to the counter movement phase. I mean, obviously there's a significant amount of blundering around as I try to learn the system. Make bad attacks, manage to ooze through things. Sometimes I wonder, you know, whether or not I'd be able to cope with the OCS again. I mean, yeah, I kind of pushed my way through reluctant enemies, but that was pretty tiny. And now I'm, I keep buying the damn things. I'm worried that, like, they're just beyond me for the same reason. Yeah. I mean, I'm just getting stupider as I get older. The counter movement, I can't really give this up. This is their goal. I'll let them try to hit it. And I got other units coming down to try to reinforce. Remember, this is the victory point space. This is the goal. The goal means that I could shift that whole 6th Army up and to give up on getting that victory point space. Of course, if I'm that close, that's going to be real hard to decide to do. But we'll see what the defenses end up at. Now, I move up here, and what I see is, the Austrians think they're all clever surrounding this unit. Okay, that's great. I can repulse this. That's something we haven't done yet, but I think I'm big enough to. I am 14 strength points. Maybe not. I can see what he is. There's no surprise there. So I can try to figure out whether or not I get there. 14 to 6, and this is upland. Upland doesn't have any modifiers. I think it's upland. Maybe it's rough. Ah, shit. It's so hard for me to tell this difference. So this turns gray. I think this is brown. I think this is rough, which might give a strength point bonus. Rough gives 1 point to the defense strength. So he's a 7 and I'm a 14. I could actually use this to do it as well, or instead. So keep that in mind. Hold on, because this is not a prepared attack. I can't dislodge this, but I could dislodge this from either. So let's see, 14 to 7. Well, that sounds like 2 to 1 pretty clearly, which is not going to be successful. So let's take a look and see if I got the strength here. I don't get a +1 strength for attack. 11, 14, 15, 16 to 7. Probably not. That still sounds like it's not going to make it to the 3 to 1. And again, I mean, we could do this in our head otherwise, but 2, 2, 8, and it's a 2, 5. Yeah. Okay. So there go those plans. And I don't think I can get anything else in up here that can do the damage. What about this? 14, we can take a guess at what this is. This looks like rough terrain again, so that would be to 11. That's definitely not going to do. So yeah, I don't have the strength to just brush him out of the way. Thought I had something neat. Had an extraordinarily effective attack here. +4 with a retreat. Had to take the retreat. Neither side, it was low intensity. Neither side really thinks that, like, they were gonna get much out of being there. Even though it's this army's goal, I still think I've got to be able to dislodge that unit effectively, not just push it aside, which is really what the intensive assaults do, is they make it more likely you're gonna take the space. Well, taking the space is valuable, there's no question of that. It does open up, it forces them back further out, actually. But anyway, with the retreat, I had to go back, and then I had a +4 to the CER roll. I rolled a dozen. That puts it up to 16. The limb is only a 10, so I am missed by 6. That's 2 E result. So I've actually, really thrashed that unit about as hard as you thrash things, pretty much. I mean, here you'd take a hit and an additional retreat and stuff like that, but wow. This is the most effective attack I've seen yet. And of course we will advance into here, and we have captured our goal. So I'm going to get rid of those goal markers because 6th Army is now free to operate however it wishes. This is not a good turn for the Serbs. Not only did they lose here, down 2, both of these got dropped by 3 CER because of retreating, in this case, retreating through a zone of control. In this case, he took an automatic hit and 2 CERs more. So, you know, the strong point here, great. I managed to bypass that and find, you know, a weaker point in the line where I could punch through. And that's putting this stack in a lot of trouble because, I mean, they're out of supply to begin with. Not isolated because they can trace through here for, you know, isolated means you aren't like able to trace through your own zones of control don't provide you a way to get any supplies at all, which is more painful. And I've also managed to cut off this. So, you know, this whole Serbian line is looking like it's in danger now. This is not going the way I thought it would. But I'm excited by that. I like to see things break. Anything's break. At this point, I have to try to figure out, is there something I can do? Can I do a counterattack and maybe push these guys back? Is there anything I can do about it? The problem is, these guys are out of supply. They'll be attacking at half strength. So unless I had sent something weak in there, that's not terribly effective. If I could punch something like this out of the way, it would threaten the supply line. If I could get both of these out of the way, then I could put the Serbs in, or the Austrians in a world of hurt. But there's a division in each of these. I didn't just leave the weak crap back there. It's not as strong as the point in the center, but it's also not weak. Yeah. I mean, moving this would be really, really helpful. The only attack that made any sense was up against here. And I launched these 2 units in there. Got a successful attack. I reduced his effectiveness and pushed him out. Don't really think I want to advance into that hex. I feel like, if anything, I'm probably going to be pushing to fall back or, you know, trying to extricate units. So I think I'll just stand there. I did some damage. That's about all I can do. And I pushed him a little bit back. So that worked out okay, I guess. Although I expended another couple of shells. It's per force. And I figured out the rules on the artillery shells. So the way it is if you have artillery in an adjacent hex, adjacent to the attack, then you can throw that artillery in, but you're only allowed to throw 1 formation's artillery in, unless you're at a higher elevation, in which case you're allowed to throw 2 from an adjacent hex. I don't know what the case is if you're in a situation where, say, I had a unit here and both of these either one could conceivably support. I'm not sure which way that goes. I'd have to look more carefully at the rule and the way it's worded. It is worded particularly difficult to understand when you read it immediately, but when you start seeing in practice what they're trying to cover, it's like, oh, now I get why that wording is constructed the way it is. It is tortured, but it's the best way to get it without a lot of words. Yeah, I just can't afford to do anything against these because I don't have the supply lines. And I'll try to limp my way out and hope that I don't take too much losses. But I gotta extricate the Serbs from where they are right now. Their line is busted. That means we're on finishing. I could retire my cav. I actually have cav in play here. I can't take the asset with it. That's the problem. And it would be paying for movement out of its next turn's movement anyway, so I don't see much advantage to doing it at this moment. And nothing in the rivers, the Komachi. This was the Austrian player turn. It's victory points. The Austrians have not gotten anything that gives them victory points currently. And so we will be entering the interphase. I've never done one of these. I don't think it's too exciting. I think we just record some values on the track, but it seems like a good place to pause. Okay, well, this is the first place where I've run into something that I'm not thrilled with in terms of I can't figure out what the fuck's going on. So over in the sequence of play, and if you look up in the index, it gets you here. When you want to find the interface, it's here. Replacements. Incorporate the allotted replacements received into units. 16.6. Okay, great. They're recorded on the resource display. That's up here. I'm all set for that. We get the number of level 1 IPs that we're eligible to construct. I haven't seen that yet. I'm following this one. And then the final thing is the victory points for the Austrian-Hungary advance, which probably should have its own number. It's like a sort of a third piece to this, but whatever. I guess, I mean, they're the same. It's just incorporating numbers. So 16.6 sounds easy. We'll go there. Players receive replacements by nationality listed on the interphase chart. Nothing further in here that talks about the interphase chart that I know of. Okay. So I would think it's in the charts and tables. And look here, it's not here. I know it's not on the combat table, right? And then I look here, and it's not here. I scratch my head. I had already looked over here because in the basic scenario, neither player constructs IPs. Look at the scenario. Okay, I wouldn't expect there to be an interface chart in here because maybe that's not here. But it's not in this, right? It's not in the setup. It's not in the scenario. We've gotten to the end of the scenario. So then I start flipping through the rule book, the playbook, and I got a reconstruction table. This has to do with rebuilding bridges and such, not in that particular scenario. I make it through here. You get to a sample. There's nothing there. All right, I'm running out of things to look in. I mean, seriously. I got the rule book. Maybe it's hidden in there. I got here where they've got the interphases, but there's no chart on there. I'm assuming there's nothing on the back here. No. That would have been really, really annoying. There's nothing on the board that I see. I'm plumb out of ideas. If it was in the rule book, it would tell me where to look, I would think. I look at what the game contains. There's no interface chart. I'm kind of lost. I am kind of lost. So I flip to the back. I don't think it's there. It's on the very back of the game. There we go. Okay. Well, things are always in the last place you look, but again, you know, it's not just the last place you look. I've already run out of places I could think of looking and just didn't even think about this. Okay, so at start we got nothing. Replacement points, we're going to get 5 for the Austrians. We're going to get 5 for the Serbians. Okay. We haven't taken any step losses yet, so other than units that are gone. So those aren't terribly useful to me. Improved positions, it looks like we have none. I think each player is allowed to build the same number. We don't get any Montenegrin replacements yet. So the last thing to look at is the victory points. And let's just make sure we haven't gotten anything. We're not refusing any strategic plans, so we didn't get anything there. Geographic objectives are one time only. Sabak is at return. Belgrade if we were knocked out of it. Serbians going in managed to get points for territories they take, and then some bigger points for other territories they take elsewhere. So the only thing that remains is the Austria-Hungarian furthest advance, which we've tried to give them several times, and it looks to me, this is 19, that's not going to do it. It looks to me like we're on 21, which is the furthest we were before, so we get a whole victory point. Now, it's a 9 victory point swing. I think it's going to be hard to stop the Austrians from getting 9 victory points. There are really no more Serbian reinforcements. I don't know how many Austrian withdrawals there are. We have one more corps going away that's going to weaken. The 4th Corps is going to go away, which is going to weaken things here, and it's going to force the 5th Corps, the 5th Army to probably have to cover this as they did historically. The 6th Army, once it succeeded in this, swung up and connected with the 5th. I read ahead a little bit. So that'll get us there. I think we're all good, though. These points are added. Let's take a look at that. These are replacement points. 16.6. Can't flip through can't flip through the rule book again. It'll fall apart, I think. I'm too rough. Okay, so these points are added. Each unit can incorporate 1 replacement per interface, but I don't think we have anything that is damaged right now. There's sort of an exception to that, which is, and if I had been clever, maybe I could have done this. This Lorznica could have been made into a bigger unit. There are other units that are available for building as well, but the Lorznica, I believe, is part of the Drina, because we got this here, and I think that's what it combines to. So if I kind of cheat a little bit here, if that's only 3 strength points, this would be at -4 strength points, which would be this marker. I could incorporate a replacement and make this bigger. I think I'm going to cheat that ahead a little bit if I'm not in a stupid place. Where are we? We're up here with the 2nd Corps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't put another division in there. So yeah, we'll hold off on doing that and not have to cheat. I don't think there's anything similar on the Austrian side, but it's hard to tell. So I got things like this 31. Oh shit. Where is that thing? That thing's here. 31 minus. There should be a detachment for that. Didn't. Oh, fuck. Is that a detachment I took off the board already? Yeah, I took the 31 detachment off, but that's only 3 strength points. I don't know. I'm going to have to paw through and see if I fucked something up. But 4th Corps leaves, so I don't really want to spend replacements on that shit. However, I don't know what happened to that detachment. It didn't get destroyed. It got absorbed into something. Ah, this has to combine with another yellow dot unit. Let's see if I can find that. That unit's down here, and that's fine. I want it there because I don't want to create this 4th Corps unit if that unit, which is, I believe, the Danny unit, is not withdrawn. That would be a mistake, right? Because then I'd lose that with the 4th Corps. But I don't know if that's how it works. So let's look at the Danny unit and see if that gets withdrawn on its own no matter what. I can't do it anyway because of how I am, but now, yeah, because of the placement, I actually do want this down here. I mean, first of all, I can't just mush it together like I could have with the other thing where I could have said, well, I could have deployed that. Here it's not something simple like that. I use these units to make the attack. But I'm curious whether the Danny leaves on its own. How am I going to find that? Well, maybe if I look here, I'll see a withdrawal. When is 4th Corps withdrawn? With 4th Corps withdrawn in game turn 6, yeah, the Danny is removed, as are the detachments. So it doesn't really matter. You can't kind of cheat and not create the unit. But I didn't want to create the unit. I wanted to do what I did because that Danny unit actually isn't part of the 4th Corps. And right now it's attached, wherever it is, over here in the 5th Army. And it's doing good work there. All right, so I think we're done. I'm not sure because, again, there are these things that tell you. So these squares are fine. These are breakdown units, right? These two, something else can turn into them. This is squares. 2 squares can turn into it, I guess, if I find the unit with 2 squares. But here's a unit with a square, so maybe I'd got to find the other unit with a square to put it with that. And similarly with this, if I find the purple squares. Oh, here's a yellow square unit to combine with that. And here's the 2 purple squares. They could combine and make one big unit. Now, there's a reason not to combine them. Although these things can break up back into small units. So like this, if this division is formed, it's formed. But if this division is formed, the 2 component units can be again broken apart. And that's important because in the mountains, you don't necessarily want full divisions fighting. All right. Anyhow, since we have finished the interphase, I am going to load this up and probably take a nap because I'm fucking tired.